I'm a senior staff engineering manager at PayPal. I'm a web and a payments GDE, also experimenting a lot with AI and ML and everything agentic with PayPal too. With me, I have Rabimba.
Hi, I'm Rabimba. I am a PhD student at University of Houston. I'm also a GD in AI and cloud. Happy to be here today,
Yeah.
Hemanth.
Me and Rabimba have been experimenting a lot with some of the bleeding edge AI tech. Let's open up with something philosophical here, right? So, yes, LLMs have been super helpful. They are helping us in multiple tasks, may it be text generation, video, audio generation, code generation, and a lot of that. Uh, but do you think the younger generation, when they just start with AI and all these LLMs, and eventually will they lose their intuition, the human intuition, and depend a lot on AI? Or what's your thought on that? Or other way around, would LLMs build that intuition that humans have?
So I actually have a little bit nuanced take on this. So my own opinion about the emergent abilities, where we say that LLMs kind of are understanding humans, is mostly based out of how it's mimicking the humans, or more specifically, how it's kind of getting that from the literature. So one of the primary things how humans always communicate, right, how we are communicating right now, is through languages. A lot of our emotions, thoughts are put into these languages and also put into as written form. Since these LLMs are primarily trained a huge number of corpuses with different kinds of emotions in those corpuses, it might not even know the meaning of it, but can probably mimic it. That's where we see these. But going forward, what was your original question, that will it increase or decrease? I think it will be a plateau where we will see that it's very near to something like human, but there will be a ceiling it cannot pass with what we can see right now.
Yeah, but should it become like human, or should it go beyond human limitations? Right.
Yes. So that's something I think we need to have a much bigger conversation about. When we say should it become human, is kind of like when do we want it to become human? For some of the tasks, we might or might not. So, for example, if you want your coding assistant, you want it to be like a machine, always helping you. But human will not help you. So, if you want a model which is like a human, it will behave like a human, where after a certain time it will ask you, okay, please do it you by yourself. So based on the tasks, we might want to limit what kind of training or what kind of LLM we want. And should it cross humans? I'm pretty sure somebody somewhere is thinking, what if? So we cannot stop progress. So that will be a very interesting thing to see where it leads.
Yeah, that's interesting. No one can predict what's going to happen in next week, but like it's fun and it's exciting to be alive, right? Rabimba, recalling maybe like 7 or 8 years ago when you were with Mozilla and you were doing your research and you had this PhD journey and you changed your thesis and stuff. Can you talk more about it? What is your thesis like, or what was and what is? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes. So I started my journey when I started my journey quite long ago. So at that time, I was with IBM Research. I was working on completely different things, mostly on two systems, tamper-proofing systems. And then I had an offer for PhD, which I wasn't completely sure if I'm right fit for it. My manager at that time, he convinced me that, okay, you have the offer, why not join it? You can always come back. That's how I got into it.
Nice.
Then I was always passionate about open source. I was always passionate about web. Also, it was because it's easy to get into, easy to build things on web. That's how I got involved. And my Mozilla journey started with a hoodie.
Yeah.
So I always love swags, like how I'm wearing one right now. I wanted a hoodie which a lot of Mozillians, that's what they used to call them, were wearing, and I wanted that. So I started open source contributing. That's how I got involved with them. Fast forward, I did my master thesis with kind of collaborating with them on high performance computing, but very specifically for web VR, so JavaScript optimization. Then I completely pivoted. So right now, what I'm doing my PhD thesis is I started from decentralization, kind of like zero knowledge machine learning proofs. But now I have gone into more into the AI side of it, but very specifically code generation, how you can generate code, what does correct code means when LLM is generating it, how do you stop being a model being poisoned so that it does not introduce code which has a backdoor in it. So some of those.
Awesome. To the audience here, like, can you speak more about what model poisoning is and what zero knowledge systems are? Right?
Yes. So since everybody is very interested about LLMs, let me start with model poisoning. So let's take a very simple use case. So Hemanth, I'm pretty sure you code almost every day, or you used to.
I do.
So a lot of the new people you are seeing, they probably use some kind of coding agents to help them,
Yep.
right? And a lot of times the code comes out, and if it just works, they're very happy to just, okay, let's just take it, integrate to our model. Works fine. A lot of the times, the models which you use to produce the code might not be commercial models. You might be able to use something from Hugging Face, or you might train something on your own. Now, none of us mere mortals have the resources to train a model completely from scratch. So we generally take existing models like Llama, Gemma, Mistral, and fine-tune it on our own data set. But these models originally still were fine-tuned on a huge data corpus. Now, what prevents anybody taking these models, or even in the pre-training dataset, have a certain kind of specific code on which it was trained on, which works perfectly fine, but with a very specific kind of word sequence or code sequence, it will go to a defined pathway. So these what we call triggers.
Yep.
So we can have poisoned data set, which comprises of very specific tokenized comments maybe, which is not which the code actually doesn't go through. But the models actually, when trained, it thinks that as a token and it goes through that. So these poison models are bad because you don't know a model you are using from Hugging Face is that poisoned. It will work 99% time perfectly fine. Only
And
very specific input it will trigger.
Yep.
Now
Yep.
you're in PayPal or Google, you're using a model, you don't even know when suddenly that model introduced a backdoor in your code.
Yep.
So yes, that's model poisoning.
Yep. So how would we kind of avoid model poisoning? I understand one, refine the data set, make sure the data set is valid, like secure. You know the source of your data, polish it, and can LLM also play an like a middle layer while it's transposing the data set and saying that, hey, I think there are a few patterns that I recognize here, which can be triggers, or I feel the data set can result in a poison model when it's trained. Are there such patterns, or have you read some interesting papers that's probably not even published? Like, I know you get
Yeah.
access to some of the academia, right?
Yeah, so there have been like a lot of different ways people are trying to look at this problem. Some of the simple, very effective but hard ones are, okay, all my training data set, I know them, I have validated them. Very effective, this will always work. Problem is when you are looking for GitHub, like whole world size data set, it's just not possible. So the other aspect is that, okay, we cannot stop it, but we can check certain patterns, and we see or certain specific type of activations when the model is generating, and we try to filter based on them. There are existing works we have been done on them, but there also have been works which shows how to beat them. And then there are approaches which I have kind of gone into in some of my own research work, where is that, okay, I cannot stop poison data, I cannot stop maybe looking at patterns, but what I can make the model do is that once it generates your code, it can still try to see that, okay, this code I generated, is it bad code? Does it have vulnerabilities? So kind of code repair. So it cannot stop doing bad things, but it can repair its own bad code. Now, maybe that can also be bit, but for now, that gives us pretty good results.
Yeah, more of a self-healing bit,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
So it cannot stop itself going bad, but once it looks bad code, objectively, it's not triggering that poison data anymore. Now it becomes a good model and tries to fix that.
That's interesting. I know we have one paper pending that we both are working for a very long time about figuring out temperatures and prompt data sets and how kind of is there a correlation? That's the hypothesis. But yeah, hopefully we will complete that
Yes,
one day.
yes.
Switching back to some of the announcements that happened in Google I/O, one of the specific ones that I was interested was Gemma 3n, right? Like we know it's mobile first LLM which can run on less memory, like
Yeah.
2 GB, 3 GB of RAM, right? Um, but one of the challenges that I see there is the context window. It's like just 32K.
Yeah.
But it's also a multi-model model,
Yeah.
right? So it can operate on text, audio, video, and stuff, right? So what do you think the strategies that you would apply if you're training Gemma 3n and still it should work on a larger data set, like because it's a 32K context
Yeah.
window, right?
So, I mean, if we just want to make it work, there are papers like right now which shows us how to increase the context window. There are ways to do that. But the interesting thing about Gemma is that it's not a single model, technically, the Gemma 3. So the 4 billion parameter is the only one which is multimodal.
Yep.
The
Yep.
27 billion parameter is not. Also, the 27 billion parameter is actually thinking model, reasoning model, I would say. The 4 billion parameter is not. So maybe once we actually go through the technical paper report, there might be ways we can kind of play with that.
Yeah, that
So-
would be an interesting space
Yes.
to play around, right? The other aspect, of course, we both are also into web in general, right? There is there are few flavors, right, where browsers are shipping LLMs, and there is some consensus happening there. Versus there are transformers JS and stuff where you can bring in models to your browser directly, and it can cache in the browser and work across origins and stuff, right? So where do you think web is heading with this paradigm? Do you feel more and more vendors would ship LLMs, or do you see there would be a way for us to plug in any like free and open source model that can run on GPU, for example, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So right now, the web is, I would say, pretty divided. So there are literally two thoughts going on. So what Firefox and this camp is thinking is that it should be a declarative way. So you have a model, and that model can run from anywhere, and you just say that, okay, I'm using this, and it should work. And Chrome has been going on, okay, so we will have something on its own, so people don't have to use too much. Ideally, I would think eventually there will be a way to do both. I think ideally, even like in future, most browsers will have a way of both shipping with their own models, and that probably will be very fixed model which they decide that this is good enough. Similar to what Gemini Nano is happening in Chrome, will probably happen something for Firefox, something for other browsers when they decide to do that. But since that's based on their own decision consensus, I think eventually they all will support a way where you can specify your endpoint. And that will come with eventually with specification which will check that, okay, does this browser has that capability, where it's running, does it have that or not, and based on that it will decide.
Yeah, it could also be a middle ground where browsers bake in their own set of LLMs. No one's dictating what that LLM should be, but they all might come to a consensus saying that we offer these capabilities, no matter what the model is baked in. And the advantage without having an endpoint would be that everything would be local and secure and all of that, right? So that would be an interesting space for web. And web is evolving, right? It's evolved multiple times from like rich internet applications to Flash and all of that to where we are today. So it keeps evolving, always bet on web for sure. Right? Having said this, with a closing note, we have few models out there in the wild, say, for example, the Llama 4 series, where they said you get a 10 million context window. Right? With context window increasing, do you see relevance for RAG? Of course, there are a few cases where RAG wins. But for day-to-day use cases or the series of use cases where we have seen where RAG has been applied, do you see those cases will still be valid, or do you think 10 million context window is good, or do you feel the model kind of gets lost in the middle? What is your thought on that?
I think now we have a more clearer idea where RAG probably will be used and where it probably slowly become obsolete. So my opinion is that I think the enterprise space RAG will keep on to being used because of the way. So what is RAG? It's essentially still a database. We can make it beforehand, sending to the LLM and everything. So the prime benefit of RAG in these scenarios is that it's gonna make the generation faster, the inference faster, less cost of running the inference and everything. So and also because enterprises can cache a lot of these specific kind of queries and also these database tricks, I think they will still go for RAG because they have the huge number of data set that query might need to run on.
Alternatively, maybe you could say, Gemini gives you 2 million context window, but also provides you context cache.
Yes.
So you would probably cache your context and play around. But I get the point. Somewhere you have to vectorize your data and probably you're grounding
Yes.
your data. RAG definitely would win. But it's an interesting case to study and say, hey, these are the classic cases where large context window makes sense, and these where RAG makes sense. And
I think in user space, they probably will lose relevance because it adds a one extra additional complexity layer. Also, it's not going to be as efficient as putting everything into context window because it just has more information to work with, so it will be always be better result. Yep. Also, normal users they're not going to work on the same document again and again. They will be just throw it and get the result.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Yeah, I know we have a lot to discuss,
Yes.
but we are at time. It was great to have you here, Rabimba, and we are here recording at Google. This is amazing, and see you at the next event.
Yes, see you.